Greetings everyone and welcome back to my channel. I am Kathy Grimm and the channel is The Grimm Reader, here with a reading update and chat. Now that I got the candle stuff out of the way, my little candle video, I wanted to briefly go over the ones that I read, and I won't talk a lot about them for energy reasons. I just don't. So one of the books I finished was the Grimm biography, and it was good, but I don't feel up to giving you a whole furthering lecture on what is philology and all that stuff. What I will say about the book is that how it definitely kind of gave the impression that the fairy tales were sort of incidental to their lives in a certain sense. I mean, they were part of their very wide range of things that they were interested in, but they were just one part of it, which I think is a little bit skewed because of the fact that the fairy tales are just, we have to accept that that's what made them famous. And another sort of interesting or sort of an irony of the situation is that of the two, Jacob was the one that always had the higher profile in terms of being the intellectual, being the outspoken, eccentric, married to his work type of person with a very high output, and also just more able to more obsessive about his work, even though Wilhelm was by no means lazy. And his output, things that he focused on were things like the German grammar, like a multi-volume work of German, it's called the German Grammar. And I really think it's one of these multi-volume works that are talked about much more than they actually read. And I have not even looked at it. I think maybe I've looked at it, but I would like to have a look at it and have a, but I balk at the idea of reading thousands and thousands of pages about German grammar, although I would like to look at it because I am interested in German grammar and I teach German grammar. But this is his take on German grammar, and it's sort of I mean, as a linguist, he's he's interested in history. He's not sort of your typical, in no ways were they sort of modern day scientists. They were really they were philologists in a certain sense. They were interested in history and where things come from, and etymology is their thing. And also how things like vowel shifts and stuff like that, sort of also kind of historical linguistics. And so the irony is that that's kind of, even things like the German grammar, that sort of people were very in awe of Jacob for producing these works. And they kind of he made his name for himself by doing these things, but yet no one really reads them. And the author kind of even sort of suggests back in the day, not that many people, like the audience for these books was kind of small, but yet the fact that they were brought into existence was deemed important enough because it had to do with finding German identity and connecting it to the language. And yet people, even back then, were the amount of people who were really, really fascinated by the intricacies of these old texts was not great. So the only thing that really kind of became widely read were the fairy tales. And they are, so from what I know, much more associated with Wilhelm, and he doesn't really talk about them that much. He doesn't really talk about Wilhelm that much. Wilhelm was always sickly, just a little bit in the shadow of Jacob. Even though Jacob was very attached to him, he was probably maybe even more dependent on Wilhelm as a kind of conversation partner and intellectual person that he could talk to than Wilhelm was on Jacob, because Wilhelm was more outgoing, had the family. Jacob was just strange. So yeah, that's what I'll say about that. I still kind of want to look for other works. I know I have read mainly Jack Zipes on the genesis of the fairy tales, and I know quite a bit about that too, so but anyway, I'm glad I read this. I have a more nuanced understanding of their lives and how complicated they were. And one thing that Zipes highlights in his essay that the students read is how their editor and publicist kind of took advantage of them, and they were naive in terms of the business dealings, and he doesn't really focus on that at all. And so it makes me wonder if Zipes was overstating it. They seem to have a fairly neutral, if not positive, relationship with the guy. So I don't know. We'll see. It's like with any big topic, you can have different points of view about things. Yes, okay, so that's that. And then the other thing that I finished, I don't have it on, I'll put a picture up here, is the fascinating personal memoir slash film analysis of the movie The Exorcist by a young writer called Malena Williams, and the book itself is published by Ohio State University Press, and it's called Night Mother, A Personal and Cultural History of The Exorcist. Malena Williams, who I think is, I don't know, she's from Portland, from Oregon, rural Oregon, I think, and grew up Catholic, and her mother was sort of, didn't want her to watch The Exorcist. I don't know if it's after the mother had seen it and thought it was inappropriate. I don't know about that. But anyway, of course, she does end up seeing it, and it affects her quite deeply. And she does a really good job of intertwining her personal issues with her life and her relationship to her mother, with a pretty deep, thoroughgoing analysis of the whole movie, and also kind of the ramifications of the movie and what effects it had on, for example, Linda Blair, who's absolutely fantastic in the movie. And I think I just was watching an short interview with her, how she's just very sort of upfront. But the person is asking, well, in retrospect, was it a good or bad thing to have played Regan in the movie Regan? And she's like, well, it's neither good or bad. It is what it was. It influenced me, and it maybe kind of caused some things to happen that were not great, but in the sense, it's sort of, she's very at peace with the choice that she made, and along with her mother, and she was young, and she seems to be pretty aware of what was going on, and the interview, and even in the book itself, there's this sort of it's a rumor, there's a lot of myths and rumors about stuff that happened to people on. It's true that strange things did happen. The fates of some of the people in the movie, the actors, were strange and sometimes quite sad and violent things happened. They ended up doing violent things. One of the people ended up basically being a serial killer. But I think that's just sort of a bit of a coincidence. And I think people maybe honed in on it a bit more because it's The Exorcist. And she does a good job of capturing the fact of how impactful the movie was, and I don't think people were ready. They were just shocked by her performance and the plot, and so that's why I was interested in watching it. And I was really positively, I thought it was good. I thought it did a good job, and it wasn't shocking in the sense of, oh my gosh, I'm so shocked. It was more just like, wow, this is good. I like it when the evil side of things has a sort of, is not just simple. It's like a complex evil, and a kind of, there's a sort of ambiguity to, why is this young girl being possessed by this devil? And it's not ever completely resolved. And she also talks quite well about the tensions between the author, Beatty, who wanted it to be, or Blatty, I think his name is Blatty. He had a more sort of Orthodox Catholic point of view and wanted it to be kind of that come out in the movie, whereas Friedkin's a movie maker. He's a cinematographer, and he made another movie I like, which is French Connection. And he's sort of the 70s. I really am interested in movies of yesteryear. Especially the 70s. It's an interesting time for movies. I do like the movies from the 70s. So I really loved the movie. I liked it a lot. I thought the performances were great. And so that's kind of what led me to wanting to read this essay. It was a complete sort of off the cuff, I'm going to order this on my Kindle. And it really kind of was good for me to sort of have this sort of closure. And it is a movie, a book, or a sort of personal memoirs about relationships to mothers, and how sort of psychologizing a little bit The Exorcist itself, and the fact that is the actress mother being kind of said to be a bad mother because she's so focused on her career, and she's not there's no husband, and all these sort of things that are sort of at play in the movie itself. So, and it's been a quick read, and there was sometimes she would write about funny things in her personal life that gave me a little bit of pause, but then I realized they only give me pause because I'm an old, somewhat, I wouldn't exactly say fuddy-duddy, because I'm not really, but I'm older. And so the way I react to certain things is kind of like, oh, okay. But then I realized she's just young, and I really sense that this is where I can learn from younger generations. They're just different. They're just the way they, and it's not bad. It's like try to be neutral about the fact that they react or they write or they emphasize certain things that I find interesting or I don't quite understand. And I really think it's a generational shift that's happening there. Just as an aside, we're watching a really good show called Hacks, where you have Jean Smart, and I don't even know age-wise, probably a little bit younger. I'm not quite sure, not that much. She's like old school comedian, all that good stuff. Such a brilliant actress. And then Hannah Einblender, the young woman who she's interacting with. It's the same kind of generational differences that lead to friction, but then also kind of how they come together is just really well done. Plus, you see her crazy mother in the show. It's another very, very sort of basically, for lack of a better term, toxic mother. Hannah Einblender's mother in the show is terrible, I think. And so that kind of, I think it's sort of, it's in a moment of awareness on my part. It's like, okay, so I don't quite understand why she would sort of do this or write about that, but now I kind of do it because it's just, I think there's just generational differences there, and I want to try and always be aware of that in my own way. It's really hard for older folks to not get kind of bogged down and I think sometimes it's okay to say, okay, I'm just not that interested in this part of youth culture, but I do think it's also important to kind of keep space for understanding or realizing that you don't understand, and that's okay. Acceptance of a certain kind. I don't know if I'm making myself clear, but I think that is just one thing that happens when you get, as I call myself a young old. I have this whole new categorization: 60 to 70 is young old, 70 is mid old, and then 80 and above is old, which is something that's in the news right now. That's all I'll say in my own. And I even had it for the 30 is young mid, and 40 to 50 is mid, and then 50 to 60 is old mid, because it's kind of old mid. It used to be old, but now it's just old mid. Anyway, it works for me. And Marlena, I don't know, I'm thinking she's probably a young mid. I don't know if she's even 40, so, quite young. I don't know the gen stuff. I always get confused with the other ways of categorizing age. So that's what I've read. And then I'm still slowly reading the Iliad, very slowly, and the other projects. So I would say that both the Stoicism one is on hold, and the French book, at least, is on hold. Not French stuff. I am reading a French book, but I've decided, just because I felt it was time, to go back to the Zola project. And I've just started the next installment in my reading list. And then in my reading list, this is the next one, even though it's quite different from, it's sort of a little aside. It's going to focus in on this one orphan girl. It really has a kind of fairy tale beginning. But what we love about Zola is this little girl that gets taken in. She's not sweet and angelic, even though her name is Angelique. She's strangely prideful and passionate, and just a wonderful Zola character that this couple takes in, and it takes place in this little house next to a church. And the opening sections are all about the saints and how, gosh, the Catholic stuff is here a lot, but all the terrible things that were done to the saints, and how people become sort of, there's a fetish around all the punishments of the saints, the martyrdoms of the saints become something that people hold on to, and this little girl is becoming obsessed with it too, and it's going to affect her in a certain sense later on. And she herself is, this orphan, and it's got all the sort of Zolarian descriptions of buildings, and sort of how buildings influence the people in them, and the sort of the characters of the villages. He's just really good at this sort of sociological descriptions of everything, and I think it will be fun. And I think I probably will just try and take this in my luggage, which is the trip is coming up on Wednesday, and I'm trying not to be too nervous about it. So in terms of, I'm still much better than I was before I started my new medication, but it has kind of the euphoria of feeling, I don't feel as much better. It's more, which I think is okay, because I think it's just, I'm feeling more normal. So I still kind of have mild ups and downs of moods and stuff. And even the travel sometimes makes me a little bit nervous, but it's not too bad. And I think in general it's going to be fine. And you just have to kind of roll with the punches when you travel. Anyway, that'll be coming up on Wednesday. It's just a week-long thing. And I'll probably try and do some kind of vloggy stuff. We'll see. So I'm going to probably take this. And then on my Kindle, which I've had trouble with because I have a hard time reading without a ruler. But I'm going to try. I decided to go with something fairly, for me, fairly sort of breezy, easy, which is the second Knausgard, Wolves of Eternity. I read the first one, Morning Sun, and really loved it. I love his style, even though it seems to me like it's just the same as when he's writing My Struggle, even though it's fictional. There's this young person in here that just seems like it's another iteration of him, which I'm fine with because he writes in such a sort of nice, you get back sucked into his world. He's just a really good writer, I think, and very entertaining. There was something else on here that I had. Oh yes, I'm also, if I get sort of want something else, another book, I'd started this a while ago, and I thought I like his style, and it's Teju Cole, one of his earlier works. Cole, it's not that early. He's a contemporary writer. Open City. I'm trying to find the cover, and I'm not very good with my Kindle, like finding things on here. Where's the cover? Which is not that black and white cover. You don't see that much, but it's got a bird on it. Oh, that's nice. I like Teju Cole, and he has kind of Spotify lists of music you can listen to, which is another sort of area that I've been rabbit holing, listening to interesting music, finding out about musicians that I'd never heard of. There's a jazz. I've become more interested in jazz. If any of you have jazz recommendations, I don't know much about it, but I kind of know what I like, which is, I don't know what to call what I like, but I don't like it when it's very sort of experimental, although if I'm in the right mood. Anyway, so that's another area that I've sort of, I start rabbit holing over the summer and become interested in weird things. So that's Teju Cole. That's the other book I'll read. And then the one that's just going fantastically, I'm already on the second book of, well, it's still 40 hours to listen to, that's very long, is Alan Moore, Jerusalem. So the long novel that takes place in Northampton, England, and it's honing in on, the second book is sort of, it's still very good, but it's more kind of going into the fourth dimension aspect of the story. So the fact that this young person who, for a brief moment in time, is unalive because of an accident. He's choking on a cough drop, a tune. He's choking on a tune, and so he's in this fourth dimension with someone who's a quasi devil. Oh my gosh, do we see a theme here? I don't know. It's more like the occult as opposed to anything sort of dogmatic. I've always been interested in sort of occult stuff. Anyway, and it's still very good. I do miss a little bit the people and their lives type stuff. This is more sort of not exactly didactic, but we're learning more about. And I do love the descriptions of the fourth dimension and how he's trying to really describe, this fourth dimension and how the lives in the three-dimensional world seem to someone in the fourth dimension, if that makes any sense. And it's still really, really good. And they're flying around looking down, and at some point, of course, the person is going to come back because he's in the story. He's already come up before in the beginning. In the second chapter, he came up mainly with his sister. And it's an amazing work of fiction. He's a brilliant writer too, and I'm really glad I just kind of decided I want to listen to a 60-hour book and buy it and read along with it, and he's a brilliant writer too, so I'm really happy with that. And it'll be my audio. I won't take the book with me on my trip. I'll just be listening to it, and we'll be glad to have it to come back to when I come back from my travels. And is there anything else? I'm not really doing Jane Austen, although I have a volume of her letters, a memoir of hers there that I thought I might look at, but I probably won't. So I'm not really participating in anything except my own rabbit holes. And yeah, I hope everyone's doing well. And the next thing will probably be some kind of vlog from me traveling or in a different part of the country. And yeah, until then, happy reading. Tell me what you're reading and what your thoughts are on anything. Teju Cole, The Exorcist, Zola, etc., etc. Talk to you later. Bye.